sumac and poison oak.
Yeah, poison ivy's no joke. Hey, welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. If you're local, come hang out with us one Sunday morning. Our service is at 10:30. This would be a great Sunday, Easter Sunday. Come be our guest. If you're not local but looking for a Bible teaching church that you can check out online, Calvary316.live is the quick link to our YouTube channel. We stream our service, so be sure to check that out as well. I'm joined in studio by the man that needs no introduction, the maestro of this dysfunction, Pope Creighton Vaughn. How are you, bud?
I am doing well. I hate to hear that you got poison on ivy.
Yeah, in the backyard.
Horrible.
No, it's that bush over in the corner. I knew it was there. We poisoned it last year, and man, it just, I got it on my arms, and it's... I haven't had poison ivy since I was a kid, so...
No, I haven't had it in many years, and I really don't want it. It's a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, it takes 10 days for it to finally, different parts of your skin react differently at different times, at different paces. I don't know how all that works, but, I'm about at that point where hopefully it's all come out. That's just terrible.
Awful.
It's a result of the curse. Thorns and thistles and poison ivy, I'm pretty sure, is what God told Adam. Also joined, Dear Daddy and Spice Daddy. What's up, fellas?
What's up, my little pepper poppers?
So, hey, you just finished the last one,
I
right?
did the last one. It's going to be an exciting episode. Hope you guys enjoy it.
So it'll be released, probably Friday, later this week, something like that?
Yeah, my guess would be either Friday, maybe tomorrow, but probably
So
Friday.
explain exactly what you're doing with the poppers and why people should check this out.
So we were kind of thinking of some things to do other than just Outlaw Radio, some short form videos. And I love Christian movies. And
it is one of your idiosyncrasies, for sure.
Is.
Yes.
And I just kind of went through my top 10 Christian movie list.
How much thought did you put into it? Was this you put some thought into it,
a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've always had kind of a top 10. So it wasn't hard to choose my top 10.
You were there.
I already kind of the ones that instantly came to mind. I was like, oh, those obviously had an impact on my life and things I will always remember.
So they rolled out episode 1 was 10, 9, 8.
Correct.
And then the next one was 7,
and so on
6,
so
5.
forth.
Yeah.
I did 3 each for the last 3 episodes, and this final one will be the final.
Was there some honorable mentions that didn't make the list?
I did, yeah. Okay. And I don't want to give those away,
right.
But check it out.
So what was the Spice Daddy element to it? The
So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. And I love hot sauce. So every episode I kind of took a swig from a different bottle of hot sauce before I went into the 3 reviews.
Lit you up a little?
Yeah. Well,
salty and lit. Sure says.
Yeah, this last one did. This last one, I bumped it up a bit. And
what'd you have?
You just have to check out the episode.
Oh, gotta check out the episode. Creighton, where can you find all these episodes?
You can find all the episodes at our YouTube channel, which is, you can find it at outlawradio.live. They're just listed. You'll see a big picture of Spice, the bottle of hot sauce in his hands. There are currently 3 videos. There'll be a 4th out tomorrow, maybe Friday.
Yeah, and if anybody has any recommendations on things they want to see, like another top 10 or something they want me to review, I will gladly do that to the best of my ability. And just send those to the popecreighton@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
And then as far as your poison ivy goes, I find it helpful when I'm fighting poison ivy to wear a Batman mask.
Really?
Yes.
That's something that will be taken into consideration.
Zach, do you get that joke at all?
No, I don't.
One of Batman's villains is poison ivy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I got the joke. It was there. Low-hanging fruit.
It was.
It was right there.
Why not? I mean, I'm already tall, so it's already a little bit further up than
right. You could get to the low-hanging fruit quicker than I could.
Yeah.
So one of the main reasons that we were that we doing things like this, and we got some more ideas, is just that even as a parent, and Vinny, you might be able to jump in on this. You're looking for good stuff to direct your kids towards. The world is very good at marketing and branding and pushing it down your throat. The algorithm does its job. But the more of this type of stuff that we can expose our kids to, quality movies and music and things of that nature, we're just trying to, again, help that mom out that's looking for some good alternative movies that they can watch with their kids that have a good message and don't have all the filth of the world. So, how you doing, bud?
Good. So was the poison ivy when you were playing with the chainsaw?
No, so that if I had the chainsaw when I needed it, I probably would have avoided. I would have avoided the poison ivy.
Were you cutting the chainsaw? Were you using
I haven't used the chainsaw yet.
Okay, make sure you wear flip flops when you do that, because that's the proper way to do that, according to Vinny.
According to Vinny, and I need to be in Honduras.
Yeah.
Yeah, or your driveway.
I've been trying to get you down there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, COVID Easter Sunday, I carved a table out of a solid piece of firewood with a chainsaw and flip flops. Nice. You guys shut the church down. There was nothing else to do.
That's
what else do you do when you have nothing else to do? You take out the chainsaw.
Before we get to the next episode review of House of David, I do kind of want to open the episode on a little bit of a sober note. A good friend, a mentor, somebody I deeply admire, have a ton of respect for, Pastor Gail Irwin, who ran an organization. His ministry was called Servant Quarters. You can learn all about Gail. His website's gailirwin.com. It's actually being run now by Calvary Modesto.
Gotcha.
Actually found that out. But he passed away this week, and his wife had passed away a couple years ago. I believe he was living in an assisted. He was 86, but not in great health, and graduated, went to be with Jesus. Just to talk a little bit about Gail, if you'll indulge me. Gail was one of the most dynamic public speakers that I've ever run across. I would attribute my personal teaching style and influence to a combination of my dad and Gail Irwin. Gail was a dynamic Bible teacher, a dynamic speaker, and Gail, he would always say that he had one string on his guitar. Like, he had one thing that he did, and he did real well. He was a pastor for years and years and years, and ran a Bible college, multiple magazines. I mean, Gail, 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, he traveled the world, spoke, sat on boards. Just God used him in amazing ways. But Gail's like his shtick, like his heart, his call, his passion was the Jesus style. It was servant ministry. It was looking at the person of Jesus, the nature of Jesus. In fact, he's written several books. The Jesus Style, most notably, sold over 500,000 copies. It's been translated into 35 different languages. But he also wrote the Father Style, the Spirit Style, the Body Style, talking about the church. Wrote a bunch of books. But Gail, so like for me, so my dad started Calvary Chapel Stone Mountain in 1980. And we were a small church for years, and yet Gail would travel around, and he would kind of go on a circuit, and he would come to our church. Like Gail Irwin would come to Little Calvary Chapel Stone Mountain there on 2nd Street, and some of my earliest memories were like what made Gail unique is that when he came to speak, they shut children's ministry down. Like, children were in the sanctuary to listen to Gail because he was that engaging. And he talked about Jesus. He taught about Jesus and revealed the person, the heart of Jesus. In fact, like, if you've listened to me for any period of time, listen to me teach on Jesus, and then go listen to Gail, you'll be like, dude, Zach's a total ripoff. Like, con artist, stole all this material from Gail Irwin. And I will just unapologetically say, yeah, you're absolutely right. If it's good, it's good. And Gail was good. And so as a young boy, as a kid, I remember early memories of Gail coming into town, and he was kind of a plump guy. He was a physical cartoon character, which is funny because then they later, like, some graphic artist made him into a cartoon character, and he was like kind of a pot belly. He had suspenders, which is why Creighton switch over to you. That's why you're rocking some suspenders tonight. Yep. As a tribute to Gail. But like, he would come and he would speak, and he was funny and engaging, And then we'd go to the old post office down the street from the church, which was a post office that had turned into a kind of a country style restaurant. And he'd love on my family and love on the church. And he was every year for years and years and years. Gail Irwin would always come to the church. And then when we started doing pastors conference or men's conferences, I mean, Gail was just tremendous impact. Got to a point where it's like I had listened to I think every sermon that Gail Irwin had in his repertoire. Like you'd heard him speak so many times. I had even sat through him doing a seminar of the Jesus style where he'd sit and do like 4 or 5 sessions of the whole thing. Most interesting, so Gail ended up, when I was in Bible college, so Cathedral City, I think it was Cathedral City out near Palm Springs is where he was headquartered. He lived. And so he was invited and he did like 3 days of lectures about like preaching 101. And what was really cool about it is that he like broke down why he does what he does. And one of the neat tricks, one of the very helpful, made so much sense, is that Gail said that whenever he got on stage, he would scan the audience for the youngest people. So the youngest people in the audience, he would pick out immediately, and that's who he'd teach to. Because he knew if he could keep their attention, he'd have everybody else's attention. So he would always, which is why kids did great. And he was animated and like, and he would, so you could say, abounding in grace, right? But Gail would go abounding in grace. Like he would add little tags and little fun things, and you would remember, but it was very crafted, like it was intentional. Because it helped you remember. It would stick in your head. It was just little ticks that you would remember. And like that whole bit that I do about Jesus in the garden, about like Jesus was a normal looking dude, because if he was the caricature that
with the trumpet voice and the halo.
Yeah, like go get the guy that's glowing in the dark. That's Gail Irwin. Like that's complete stolen from Gail Irwin. Just a wonderful, wonderful man. Finished his race, graduated into glory, has been reunited with his wife of so many years. He will be missed. His legacy will continue on. His ministry will continue on. Again, GailIrwin.com is the website, and they've taken all of his books, video, audio. It's all there for free. I have a bunch of hard copies of the Jesus style and things like that. Required reading. Again, I would just really exhort you to go, like, you want to be blessed, just dive into Gail Irwin's ministry, and be inspired by it. And just a dear brother, dear saint. And he made time. Like, Gail was one of those people that he had time for everybody. And he was one of those guys that you would meet him, and you would walk away feeling like you were the most special person in the world. Like, he had that ability to just, whether you were a little kid or a grandma, like, he had time for you. He had time to talk to you and really take an interest in you. And it wasn't fake. It wasn't phony. He wasn't a celebrity, though he was a celebrity in our circles. But he just genuinely loved people, and he loved Jesus. And his heart was to help people see the nature of Jesus. And that of all the things Jesus was, is he's the ultimate servant. And man, you want to talk about a lesson that has been lost in mainstream evangelical culture. That's a big one. And so I was heartbroken to hear. I had gotten a text from my dad yesterday, letting me know that he had passed away. Then got a text from my mom also. Gail, just a saint, just such a good man. And took a particular interest in my life. I had some great conversations about ministry and the early days of ministry, and then even in Bible college, I was able to go and have dinner with him and his wife. And Gail was a road warrior. Like, he loved what he did, and it was rough when he couldn't do it anymore. Hard. But man. What a ministry, what a man, what a legacy. Again, GailIrwin.com. Get Fed Today, what we're going to do, so Get Fed Today is the podcast that we run on the side. 5 Bible studies from 5 different guys released on Mondays so that you can get fed each day of the week. And part of it is to have diversity, different speakers, different topics every day. Next week, just as an ode to Gail, we had talked about it. We're gonna just do all 5 days are gonna be like the best of Gail Irwin.
It's gonna be Gail Week.
It's gonna be Gail Week,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be a tribute to Gail Irwin, which is great. Justin, I know you had a chance to hear him once, young at Calvary Gwinnett, I think back in the day. Vinny, did you ever get a chance? You never heard Gail Irwin. Creighton, you had memories.
Yeah, I absolutely did. I remember him because of the suspenders. And if I'm not mistaken, he was one of those guys that always had candy in his pockets.
But I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because I would have been real little.
Yes.
And he was always like, "Oh,
but you would
you guys go
always
talk to him. He'll give you candy."
you'd always remember the suspenders.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a funny story. So Gail, we'll close with this. So Gail never asked for payment, never asked for an honorarium. He'd come and speak. There was no price tag. Only thing Gail would ask is that you would, give him a table in the foyer so that he could, have his books available, and he would have these servant stickers, things like that. He'd have some memorabilia, just merch that people could buy, whatnot. And so there was kind of a running joke amongst like Calvary pastors about like I've called David Guzik recently the new Gail Irwin because he's traveling around speaking, and I told him he needs to get some suspenders and take the mantle. But so I was maybe like 10th or 11th grade, and it was one of the early pastors conferences, and Raul Reese, who's a pretty notable pastor from California, he made this sign that said, "Today, free merch." And he conned me into taking it and putting it on Gail's table while Gail was talking to someone. And it was a funny, I think like one or two people maybe grabbed a book, and Gail turned and saw it and looked right over at Raul. And I'm like, oh no, I've been used. This is terrible. But Gail, just a dear saint, and he'll be missed, and can't wait to see him again in heaven. He's with Jesus, which is super cool.
I think you should wear some
Say that.
That's a lot of messages.
Some suspenders.
Some suspenders on Sunday.
Well, it is Easter, maybe.
I was having a hard time with that.
Maybe. I don't know.
Some
We'll
suspenders
Hey, on
on,
the bright
Sunday.
side,
Say that 3 times.
This means
fast.
that now
luck.
David Guzik can quote Gail Irwin.
That's true. No.
Hey,
Silver
linings.
Come to find out, I actually, so there's been this legend that David Guzik will only quote people that have died. Mm-hmm. I brought that up to him last time we were hanging out.
That's right.
And he was like, that's actually not true. I have not seen an example of that, but Gail is definitely safe to now quote, because he's finished his race with excellence, and he definitely has a reward. And I am sure all the things that Gail ever wanted to hear in life, if you've ever listened to him or ever heard, the one thing would be, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That was what he was about. And yesterday he heard that as he entered glory, and Jesus added that he could enter his rest. And so Gail's no longer on the road. He has finished the race. He has reached the final destination, and I'm blessed to have been able to call him friend. Speaking of that, there's an interesting segue to this. So I wanted to recommend a book. The name of the book is A Tale of Three Kings. And the reason I'm recommending this is that where we are in our travels through the Harmony of Histories is we're looking at, so the anointing has been removed from Saul, but he's still king. David has received the anointing. He's not king. That's a bit of an awkward dynamic. Why does David have to surrender himself under the kingship of Saul for as long as he does? And the idea, and spoiler, as where we're going with our study, is that sometimes we have to submit to the Sauls in our lives so that the Saul in us is removed. And so like Gene Edwards, it's a study in brokenness. So it's basically a play is the way it's written. There, the first act is all it's Saul and David, and then as a result, the second half is then David and Absalom. Because there's the famous scene where David is in the back of the cave. Saul comes in, and the men are like, "Hey, we can end this now. You can take the throne." And David's like, "No, I'm not," because like God's in control, and when God wants to remove Saul, he can remove Saul, and until then, he's the Lord's anointed, and I have to submit under him, even though he's throwing spears and he wants to kill me. And then what's interesting is then the parallel is later in his life, David is faced with the same decision. Does he hunt down his son Absalom? Absalom is making his way to Jerusalem. Does he fight? What does he do? How does he handle Absalom? Does he handle Absalom like Saul would? And he decides not to. He's like, well, if God has removed his hand from me, then I should do what Saul did and abdicate the throne. If God doesn't want Absalom, like God will handle this. Like I don't have, like he does the opposite of what Saul would have done. And it's an absolutely wonderful book. It's a very quick read. It's like 100 pages, give or take. Yeah, 100 pages or less. Very easy to read, quick read. Again, A Tale of Three Kings. So this book, if you listen to any Calvary Chapel guy, on 1 Samuel 18, 19, 20, this section of scripture, which I've been doing recently because I'm teaching through it, every single guy will quote this book. David Guzik quotes this book. Joe Focht quotes this book. Damian Kyle quotes this book. Sandy Adams quotes this book. Ken Graves quotes, like literally John Corson. Every single person I've listened to in this section will quote this book. My mom, when I was in high school, bought it for me and recommended I read it. And so I did. And this was my copy, and I've had it ever since. I highlight it, different highlighter every time I read it. And just recently reread it. But I asked my mom the other day, I said, this, like, Gene Edwards is not a Calvary Chapel guy. Like, he's actually kind of an obscure author. Lived in Florida. Like, how did this become, like, a staple within Calvary Chapel circles? Like, did Chuck have him speak at, like, an early conference? Was this required reading in some of the Bible colleges back in the day? Like, where did this come from? And my mom was like, I have no idea.
Is that the same guy that a few episodes back you were talking about, a guy that wrote a play on
Totally different book.
Totally different book. Just wrote in kind of play format.
Yeah, there's another book that I reviewed was specifically about Saul.
Yeah,
the tragedy of Saul, and that guy's totally obscure. Like you can't find anything about him.
But different authors.
This is totally different guy. In fact, he's written a few other books. Never even knew. I ordered them. This is the only thing I've ever read of him or have encountered anybody else. Like I talked to my mom. I was like, do you know he has other books? She's like, I have no idea. So I asked her, I was like, where's the connection? Like, did he know Chuck back in the day? How is this such a staple thing? My mom texted me last night and she said, by the way, your dad read that book because of the recommendation of Gail Irwin. And so at least within my family, we were exposed to this book because Gail told my dad he needed to read a copy of it. And then my mom did, and then I did, and whatnot. So this kind of a fun, I was going to do this review anyway, had no idea that there was a connection back to Gail Irwin. But highly recommend A Tale of Three Kings, especially Calvary 316, folks. With what we're going to be going through, this is, I would highly recommend reading this. Miss Karen, I had recommended her read it, and she has been sending me quotes.
When I first saw it, I thought it was a book on Christmas, and I could only think of one other book that was written, about Christmas that kind of dealt with that kind of same thing, written by a famous person,
a famous author as well. Yeah.
You can find it on Amazon. It's called An Amazon Christmas.
Is that the name of the book?
It is.
Who's it written by?
It's written by Jessica Adams
and Emily Norris.
Emily Norris.
And Emily Norris, yeah.
So that
Amazon
that,
Christmas.
that almost fits in. It talks about two different Three Kings kind of
Yeah,
kind of
really.
vibe
I
to
mean,
it, but-
almost identical stories.
Yeah.
Truth
Yeah.
be told. So, Vinny, bail him out here. Bail him out.
I'm gonna need a bucket.
Yeah, a bucket.
I've been doing this for like what 2-3 years now.
Yeah, now it's been
and
solid.
It's been really difficult for me to work this into every episode.
All right, so let's segue. We got a whole bunch to talk about tonight. Episode 7. So we are at the home stretch of House of David, the Amazon Prime series about the life of David. First season. They're filming the second season. Episode 7. There's this one. We got one more. Thoughts? Anybody want to add at the flyby of what the story was?
I feel like this was a very small episode in terms of what actually happened. I feel like not a whole lot happened. It is as they're getting ready to get to the Battle of Goliath. So one of the main things that happened is
It opens with the armies at the Valley of Elah.
right.
Like it opens there, but like we don't get into the fight. Like the main
Right.
action is it's the 40 days and 40 nights of Goliath coming out and mocking the God of Israel, etc. So it's the reveal of Goliath. There's that. And I guess the biblical other end of the story is that like it ends with David on the way now to the battle. Like biblically, that's what we're looking at. Like it's those 40 days, give or take, of what's going on. So that's the big picture. Continue.
So wrong button. There's the battle. Everyone's battling, lining up in battle array. They flash back to the castle where there is a confrontation between David's older brother, whose name Eliab, David, and Jonathan, because Eliab wants David out of the castle because Saul is still losing his mind. And they put David out of the castle. David goes back home, where he spends most of the episode.
That actually happens at the end of the previous episode, I think.
Does that happen at the end
Yeah.
of the previous episode?
That happened. Yeah.
Everything runs together eventually.
opens-
like I said, I don't remember a lot going on in this
Yeah,
episode.
it opens with David like walking, like Jesse and one of the daughters see David walking up, kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
So the previous episode 6, closes with David leaving.
Then apparently I remember this episode even worse than I thought I did.
Okay.
Yeah, this was my probably second least favorite episode.
I would agree.
But and
Yeah, I
I
felt
don't
like-
think it was
I
necessary.
was all
but
excited
it
for it because I
kinda-
was like, yes, this is going to be the one where he fights Goliath.
Right.
And I like stayed glued to it the entire time and it
right.
didn't happen.
But
was like,
I don't see it completely necessary. But it was kind of because in the Bible you just see that Jesse sends David to his brothers.
Right. They
when all
added
this
the
happens.
Samuel thing.
And this kind of added a deeper context to that, being like David's dad finally realizing what he was called to, and then sending him off to be like, okay, whatever happens to the glory of God. Kind of thing, I guess.
Let's take one step back to give the episode, because I agree with everything you guys are saying. Like it was a slow episode, kind of maybe weaker than some of the others, but I think it was very necessary. And I say that because of this. I've seen the last episode. So like you're going to go from episode 6, which was Baller with Goliath, and then you're going to go to 8, which is like the conclusion of all of this. Like you got to have it'd be like some of the Game of Thrones episodes where like you got to move people to places.
Right. You need a little bit of breathing room.
Like you need the ability to like, because you just go to the next episode, people are in places.
right.
no,
that makes sense.
1000%. It'll be nice when we can go back and binge watch it.
Well, I think that's
Because it's
Yeah,
the,
let Spice get
it's the
that.
being
Didn't-
patient part that's hard. You know, it's
Right.
like, oh, I thought he was going to fight Goliath this episode. So then I feel like what Creighton said, it's like, man, I just got strung along. You know, and then you're anticipating. So once they all come out and, man, once season 12's done,
Right.
Well, I think that's the difficult part as a Christian or even somebody that's Jewish that knows the story,
Right.
And they start watching this, so they already know the beginning and they know the end,
Yes.
And then you build up this anticipation of what the episode's supposed
Yeah.
in your mind. What the
like this has
episode-
got to be
this
the
has
one where
gotta
he
be-
fights Goliath.
and
It's
then
all
it just
built up. Episode
extends
6.
it.
Here we
Yeah.
go. rock to the forehead. How is it going to play out? And then
Right.
you don't get to watch, and you're like,
And I think that's where
man.
I think that's where I was.
Yeah.
This is like I was ready for the fight.
yeah, and I even cheated. Like I refused to cheat all the way through, and I was stuck in a hotel room that week, and so I was like, let's watch 7. Like I really want to see Goliath go down, and
Right.
it didn't happen. But I mean, aside from that, it has to play out the way it has to play out,
Yeah.
and it's very well done. And when we can go back and binge watch it, we're gonna love episode 7.
To me, it's a parallel episode to episode 2. So episode 2 required backstory development because 1 was awesome, 3 was awesome, but you had to get like you needed an episode to get to 3 from 1. I feel very similar in the sense that like to get from Goliath episode 6 to the conclude like the climax of the story episode 8, you needed this episode. The one thing about it though that and this is just it's par for the course, but it's the danger of it is like it then does necessitate them writing a bunch of non-biblical things into the narration because there's just not enough biblical information. Like you go from chapter 16 to chapter 17 in 1 Samuel, and David is on a cart going to the battle. Like there's like we're flying through things, and so like you know the Saul's mental faculties falling apart, and the daughters wanting to get to the battlefield, and then Samuel coming and Jesse, and then there's the whole storyline of like the commander of the Lord's armies, these visions he's having. Again, cool backstory with Joshua, fun, but just again not biblical at all.
I totally forgot about the commander of the Lord's armies with the river where the guy's standing there in the full armor.
Yeah.
Completely forgot about that.
Do you think that was
Totally
for lack of a better term, Christophany?
Well, yeah, no.
Aspect of it?
Well, yeah, but it just didn't happen with David.
Right.
Right. The one with Joshua is definitely.
Do you think that's what they're going for? Because that, or what they're hinting at?
I think they were totally hinting at that. Totally hinting at that. But the problem is that it just isn't relevant to the story of David. Like it didn't happen. Nor did Samuel come to convince Jesse to let David go, to let him rise, because these were the final words of his mother, which was a bizarre.
All of the mother stuff I don't like.
Bizarre.
I find it really. I don't like it.
I will say this about the mother thing. And one way they softened it a little to give them some credit, but then they still stayed on a trajectory I don't like. So they softened it because Jesse tells David, like we learn that his first wife, the mother of all the other sons, died. So he took another wife. So the problem with that, and then he doubles down on that she was not Jewish, an enemy of the people of Israel, which is just bullocks. Like I don't get that at all. But the only verse that they can point to as any type of like what they've built the entire story on, from what I've read, is where David, I think it's Psalm 51, says, I was born in the iniquity of my mother. Mm-hmm. But now they like there was not the iniquity of his mother.
Right, because it was a lawful marriage.
Because it was a lawful
not
marriage.
A fornication.
It wasn't fornication. So again, that whole thing is just a total unforced error. It's a scar on the show, in my opinion. I'll be honest. It's a scar on the show. Everything else has been great, but that to me is just the one element where it's like, I hate it because we've been watching last 2 weeks with spring break. We've been watching this with the boys. So Quincy and Theo, we've been watching. We just finished episode 7 last night, and you know, and I mean to have to say like, I mean we have to have these conversations after every episode. What's biblical and what's not. Flip side to it, I love to have those conversations like that. That's what makes this worthwhile. There's enough biblical in it that is good, but you embrace those conversations. And you've been doing the same thing with your girls, right, Vinny?
Yep.
Which is the way to do it. And my sons have totally. It's interesting. Like the highs that we experience, same highs. The lows, same lows. Like they've kind of ridden the same wave. which I think is interesting. There was another unforced error. And it took watching it the second time for me to pick up on it. And I was like, wait a second. And I rewound it. And we watched it again. And I was like, Jessica, did you pick up on that? And she goes, no. So I did it a third time. And she was like, that's an error. So there's the scene where David and Samuel are sitting out at the campfire. And David's playing music for him, and they're talking about, life stuff. And, David, talks about his mother and his mother's influence in his life, which prompts Samuel to talk about his mother, who, came and, that's gave Samuel to Eli the priest. But he makes the comment, he goes, she would come and worship God and pour herself out at the temple, and they would even think that she was drunk. But they said temple. Samuel,
not tabernacle.
The temple doesn't exist yet.
Right.
There is no temple. There's the tabernacle, but there isn't a temple. And they very specifically use the word temple. Samuel uses the word temple, and it's like, yeah. Like, that doesn't come into this story at all. Like, it's David's son that builds a temple. So that, again, the more you deviate from the biblical narrative, the more opportunities for these type of mistakes to be made. So I would just hope that, and again, the second season, I mean, there's room for creative license. I think got to be careful.
I think one of the issues they're going to have with the second season, and I'm interested to see how they deal with it, is they have built up this like Goliath is David's time to take like his rightful place is whatever, like where Samuel says let him rise, or David says when he goes to fight the lion, he ends that episode by saying I'm done waiting. It's like they're gonna have to second, third, fourth seasons are gonna be him doing a lot of waiting and trying not to get killed by Saul. And I wonder how they're going to handle that tonal shift from the show building up David as being like ready to take on the world to now being in this subservient, like submissive role where he has to not.
One of my favorites.
Jon Snow being sent to the wall.
One of my favorite time periods in the Bible is that portion where David is waiting, like in the cave, or right after where David's hiding out in the field and Jonathan's shooting the arrows, kind of thing. Like those are some of my favorite, for lack of a better term, stories in the Bible. The recorded history of those aspects of it. Those are some of my favorite scenes in the Bible overall.
So let me ask you guys a little Bible trivia. How long from David and Goliath does David become king? Like how many years pass?
Probably 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so we got 3 to 5. You want to take a stab?
I feel like it's like 20 years or something. I feel like it's a while.
So we got 20 years with Pope C. Just want to throw out a number?
I'll say 10 to be in the middle.
It's 10.
Way to go.
So we know, according to 2 Samuel, that David was 30 when he became king.
Gotcha.
And he's not old enough to be in the army quite yet. So he's probably 18, 19 years old with David and Goliath. So there's a decade that passes, roughly. So, and you look at chapter 18, and how much time does it cover? It could cover a couple of years.
Well, I mean,
like there's a lot. My point is there's a lot. There's a decade they got to cover before he's king. So there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of story, and there's going to be a lot of creative license to color in between the lines. Some they just need to be very careful in how they do it.
Well, even chapter 17, which you covered on this past Sunday, could cover a couple years.
18.
Yeah. Was it 18?
It was 18.
18. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just the
for sure.
David becoming the captain of the thousands and going out and doing what he did with,
for sure. And then when he finally, he's told that he's going to marry the oldest daughter, and then that time comes and goes, and then she's getting there's so much that's there. They just need to be very. I have no problem. Like, again, if I were writing this show, You're going to go Origins to Goliath, season 1. You're going to go Goliath to like the final episode of the second season. David is now on the run. Season 3 is David on the run. That closes with David becoming king into season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Season 4 is like the early years conquests of David. Season 4 that throws in Bathsheba. And some of and then season 5 becomes the family struggles, and everything falling apart, and ends with like the enthronement of Jonathan. Like you could play out 5 seasons. I think you know, and you could even begin in the same way. Like, how cool would it be if they started season 2? You know, so season 1, episode 1 begins with David and Goliath, and then they go back. You know, the last episode comes back to the opening scene. You could keep the same creative blueprint and have like the second one with like him fleeing for his life.
Right.
And then come back into explaining how that story unfolds, and that's how it is. Like, and then you could have like, you know, the next season him being on the throne, and then it comes back to like he's in a cave. You know, like you could play it out with the same blueprint. I think that would be super. But nobody's calling me. So if you'd like to reach out, if you want some great ideas, popecreighton@gmail.com is the easiest way, or my X handle, which is @Zach_Adams, which Creighton could have put all that stuff up.
Yeah, I forgot to set up the watermark. Sorry.
So I want to talk with the time that we have left about something. So to begin with, this is the week of Passion. That should be acknowledged. This is this seminal week of Christianity. This week began with Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, riding on a donkey, and the crowds declaring him king. Takes a turn Monday morning when Jesus goes into the temple and cleanses it, and spends a couple days teaching, going back and forth with the religious leaders. At one point, as he's making his way out, he sits there on the Mount of Olives and gives the sermon, the Olivet Discourse about the end times. Jesus and the disciples will do what every other Jew is doing, and they will celebrate the Feast of Passover, which is why they had come to Jerusalem to begin with, which is commemorating the angel of death, the last plague of Egypt, where the angel of death came to kill all the firstborn of Egypt. The angel of death would only pass over homes that had the blood, sacrificial blood of the lamb on the doorposts. So death passed over those that had placed their faith in the sacrifice of a lamb. Again, the imagery is beautiful. That's why they've come to Jerusalem. They're celebrating Passover. The city has swelled to 2 to 3 million people. Rome's on high alert. You know, it's a chaotic powder keg of a scene. They gather in an upper room. They celebrate Passover. Jesus with his disciples. Amazing scene. Jesus washes their feet. He teaches them about servanthood, about discipleship. He takes the symbolism of the Passover Seder and redefines elements. The afikomen, the middle piece of bread, no longer represents Isaac, but now will represent his body broken for them. And then the third cup the cup of redemption, which follows that, will represent it'll be the new covenant of his blood. Communion. He institutes the Eucharist, communion. He leaves the upper room. He goes to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray, knowing that Judas has already betrayed him. He's arrested that night. He's tried. He goes through 6 kangaroo courts, 6 trials, from a small group of the Sanhedrin to other members of the Sanhedrin to the full Sanhedrin. He stands before Herod, Pilate twice. Pilate, because of political pressure, ultimately sentences him scourging and then crucifixion. Jesus is laid in a tomb. the tomb of a man named Joseph of Arimathea. Nicodemus, his friend, helps him do this, prepare the body, but the Sabbath was coming, so they couldn't finish the process. And then the next week begins with the women coming to the tomb to finish the job of preparing the body, only to find that the stone was rolled away and his body was no longer there and Jesus had rose from the dead. So that's the week. I hope that helped give you some context. I didn't want to talk about Easter this week because that's what everybody does. Instead, I want to talk about the Negro Leagues, baseball, Jackie Robinson, and Branch Rickey. I know, talk about a pivot. Why do I want to talk about this? Well, because it's my show and that's what I wanted to do, first and foremost. Secondly, yesterday, April 15th, was Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. It's Jackie Robinson Day because many, many years ago, I think it was 46, April 15th, 1946, Jackie Robinson was promoted to the Brooklyn Dodgers, where he started a game, professional baseball, broke the color barrier, and opened the gateway for the integration of baseball. Jackie Robinson wore the number 42. That number has been retired across baseball, and the only time that the players are allowed to wear 42 is on Jackie Robinson Day. So all across Major League Baseball yesterday, every single Major League Baseball player was wearing a blue 42 to commemorate Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson is no doubt a hero. Jackie was a notable, seminal character in the civil rights movement. And again, he came even early. This was, again, in the mid-40s where baseball broke the color barrier. And it was, Jackie experienced incredible persecution, vitriol, racism for what he was doing. And was required to not fight back. That was one of the terms, one of the deals. It was an agreement that he would not fight back, that he had to just take it. Lots have been written about Jackie Robinson. Again, there's a whole section of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame dedicated to Jackie Robinson, and rightfully so. You would never have had Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. It changed the game of baseball. And it also opened the door for the reevaluation of the stats of the Negro Leagues. Like you have guys like Satchel Paige that was never really given an opportunity to compete. He was able to pitch in Major League Baseball, and then even in his 50s, he ended up pitching for the Braves so he could get his pension. They let him pitch a game for the Braves, put him on the roster so he could get his pension. Just very, very cool stuff. Great history. You can go back even further. One of the early proponents of integration was actually Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth was a Negro Leagues favorite because when he would, in the offseason, barnstorm, so these guys didn't get paid a lot of money, so in the offseason, they would get groups together and they go to towns across America and they'd play exhibition games. So you're the best team that you could get together in your town, they'd come and get destroyed by a group of Major League Baseball players. But it's how kids got to see their heroes. Babe Ruth was known for having African Americans on his team, or even barnstorming in Negro areas, competing against other black players. Babe Ruth. A lot of people had a big problem with Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record because of this racial component to it. But Babe Ruth would have been the first person to have cheered on, the great feat of Hank Aaron breaking the home run record. My point is not actually really to talk too much tonight about Jackie Robinson, but I want to talk about part of the story that people maybe have never heard before. But before I get to that, what kind of brought this to my attention is I saw an old clip of Buck O'Neil. So Buck O'Neil is, if you ever watch Ken Burns' documentary on the history of baseball, which I highly recommend anybody, because baseball parallels American history. It's Americana to everything that America deals with, from the Industrial Revolution to the recoveries from the Civil War to unionization, to the integration, like baseball in America parallels across the board. Buck O'Neil is a very famous Negro League ball player. He's in the Hall of Fame, the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. He's a central character in Ken Burns' documentary, The History of Baseball. Buck O'Neil is such a fun person. But I ran across this clip where he talks a little bit about Jackie, and that's going to kind of set the stage for our conversation. So, Creighton, you work your magic and roll with it.
And you tell us about Jackie Robinson.
Oh, outstanding individual. And Jackie was so different than we were because we were acclimated to segregation. But not Jackie. Jackie came to the Monarchs in 1945. We'd been going to a filling station in Oklahoma for 20 years, the Monarchs. We'd never gone to the restroom because on the door it said for white men only. So Jackie's there, and we played that night in this town, and the next day we go to the filling station to get some gas. The man put the hose in the tank, said, "Oh, you boys were wonderful as usual. They filled the park up. Good to see you." Jackie got off the bus, started walking to the restroom. He said, "Boy, where you going?" I said, "I'm going to the restroom." He said, "Boy, you know you can't go to that restroom." Jackie said, "Take the hose out the tank." Now the man thought then, because we got a 50-gallon tank on this side. We got a 50-gallon tank on that other side. He's not going to sell that much gas, to one customer until we got back there again. You know what he said? "You boys can go to the restroom, but don't stay long."
Comes down to economics a lot of times, doesn't it?
Of course. But the gist of that story is this. From that day on, we never got gas at the station. We couldn't go to the restroom. Yeah. We never played in a town that they didn't have a place for us to stay and to eat. Jackie said, "Listen, you're playing, you're making money for these people. This is a capitalistic society. You don't have to take these things." Thank you, Jackie.
First, like, how do you not love Buck O'Neil? Like, he's
yeah, it's fantastic.
He's great. Just to give a little of the dates. So Jackie played for the Kansas City Monarchs in 45. In 46, he got called up to the Montreal farm system of the Dodgers. So in 46, he played AAA ball in Canada because Canada was more receptive to integration. And then it was in 47 that he got called up to the Dodgers. Now, this is actually the Kansas City Monarchs jersey, number 5. This is the Jackie Robinson jersey of 45. My kids, we've been to the Hall of Fame. We love following Negro League baseball. My sister asked me why, and I told her, I was like, baseball enables me to teach my kids about a really rough section of American history through the lens of baseball. Like it provides a natural way to talk about things that were rough, were terrible, in a way that they can relate to because of baseball. So like Theodore, this is he's got the actual, he bought this with his own money. This was the Kansas City Monarchs hat that went with this jersey. And then my other son Quincy, he bought this on his own. It's a hat that has all of the Negro League emblems on it. So all the different teams. This is the Atlanta Black Crackers, which I have a ball cap back there. So it's interesting stuff. Here's the story that people don't know. Jackie Robinson would have never broken the color barrier. Like he gets undeniably, I'm not trying to take anything away from Jackie Robinson at all. But Jackie Robinson would have never had the opportunity to do what he did if it weren't for another gentleman, and he was a gentleman, that doesn't get nearly the credit for what took place. And that is a guy by the name of Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey was the Dodgers general manager who had made it his life's mission to integrate the major leagues. So Branch Rickey has had many major contributions to baseball. Branch Rickey is in the Hall of Fame. Branch Rickey he was a longtime St. Louis Cardinal, was the general manager there for years and years and years. He invented the farm system. He invented minor league baseball as a funnel for the big leagues, so he could sell players and have a pipeline. Like, he invented that. Like, he created it. Branch Rickey, though, what people don't know, and this is part of the story that gets buried, and this is what I wanted to bring up tonight. Branch Rickey was a absolutely godly man of integrity and character. Branch Rickey loved Jesus to the point that when he was a player and then a manager, Branch Rickey refused to ever play on Sunday. He wouldn't play. When he was a player, he sat out. When he was a manager, somebody else took control. When he was a GM, he stayed home. It was a conviction. He was a Methodist. Again, loved Jesus. He was a gentleman. Like, you can read about Branch Rickey. But it was Branch Rickey's Christian ethic. Do you know why he picked Jackie Robinson? It wasn't his talent. There were more talented players at the time.
Was it because Jackie was also a Christian?
It's because Jackie Robinson was a Christian. And he had gone to, I believe it was a YMCA conference that Jackie spoke at. Because Jackie was I want to say UCLA, might have been USC. But he was a football star. And then he went into the military. But Jackie was a Christian. And Branch Rickey was a Christian. And Branch Rickey chose Jackie Robinson for one reason. Because they were gonna do what Jesus had called them to do. Like, it was a deeper thing, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about this element that Jackie Robinson chose to turn the other cheek. Why? Because Branch Rickey held him to it, because that was what Christ had called them to do. Like, the only way, like, we have to emulate Jesus, we have to emulate Christ. The only way that we can turn back hatred and vitriol is through kindness and meekness. But it was their Christian. What's crazy about Branch Rickey, so as a young man, one of his first exposures to coaching is he coached, and I want to make sure I get this right, 1904. So in the history base, this is so early. Branch Rickey's like in his early 20s, and he coached the Ohio Wesleyan University baseball team, which, by the way, had black guys on it. And they were traveling, they went to a hotel, and one of his players, Charles Thomas, was denied entry to the hotel. And so the only way that Branch Rickey was able to get him into the hotel is that Charles had to stay with him. And basically, it was signed that he was the help. And Branch Rickey, in his own memoirs, said that once he had got it all figured out, got him into the room, he goes into the room, and Charles, who was a great ball player, was just grabbing at his skin, saying, "This is the only thing that makes me different from anyone, and I don't understand." And like, Branch Rickey ministered to him, and it was that day, 1904. So the color barrier is not broken until 47. 43 years earlier, Branch Rickey had determined that the day would come that he was going to be the one to institute change, and he was going to break the color barrier. And when he became the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, that became his aim. And they sent out scouts throughout the Negro League. They actually did it under the guise that the Dodgers wanted to create their own Negro League team, you know, as a side hustle. They were looking for players, but Branch Rickey had a plan. Who was he looking for? He was looking for a Christian man of integrity. Now, we're out of time. There's a whole bunch of passages of scripture I wanted to look at about integrity, character. We've lost this in Christianity, the idea of character and integrity. Let me define character. Character is doing what's right when no one's looking. That's what it is. It's doing what's right because God is watching. It's doing what's right whether you gain or you lose, whether you're rewarded or you're punished. It's doing what's right because God has determined what's right. And if you suffer, so be it. But it's character. Like we live in a Christian culture that's it's a mile wide and an inch deep. When I think God would rather a man have a faith that's an inch wide and a mile deep. That makes sense?
Oh, for sure.
Character. We don't talk enough about character and integrity, about doing what's right because it's right. Not because the world will look at it, not because you'll get an accolade, not because, there's an attaboy associated with it. It's doing what's right because it's right. Like Branch Rickey saw a wrong and he was determined. Like, I read his entire biography. Like, there's so much more to the story. I mean, the venom that he received. But nobody talks about Branch Rickey's involvement. Very few. And nobody talks about the fact that why was the color barrier broken? It's that you had a white guy of conviction that found a black guy with boldness, and their commonality was Jesus. And they said, let's change the world. That's not the story of 42, is it? Not often. You don't get that. But that's why I have this jersey. Because there's something inspiring to that. Because we live in a world that, you know what our world needs? It needs Christians that are not popular, that are not cool, that are not flashy, but have integrity and character and are immovable. Vinny, jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first time that was explained to me was as a small child, and it was, it was work ethic. It was working up on the ranch with Bill Mahaffey, and it was, 8-year-old kid taking shortcuts, and he would come around and, I was weed eating. There's parts of the farm you couldn't see from the house that I was weed eating, and there was no reason to do a good job because nobody could see it. But he would go back and check my work, and that was, man, he pounded that into my head, do the right thing when no one is looking.
Yeah.
And I've lived my entire life based off that, thanks to his instruction, but it's having those role models and people in our lives to grill that into our heads, and it's massively lacking in this country. That's why people can go out and do all the sinful things in the world, because somebody didn't pound that into their head. And it's a great message, and it's one that our country needs.
Did you know any of that about Jackie Robinson?
Not a word of it.
Spice Daddy, you're a baseball fan, and I know you've always been jealous of my Atlanta Black Crackers hat.
So I think where it resonates with me is like my family's been in the South since 1720, and so
deep into their eyes,
deep into your. So like I've lived through people saying, "Oh, you're a Southerner, you must be racist," and things like that, and that's.
It's such a terrible caricature.
It is, but I've also seen the Southerners that are like that.
Yeah, right. I've seen the Southern racists,
right?
Yeah.
And it's not something that I'm not aware of, and that's where the Negro League stuff happens, and that's where me as a Christian in the South, not just a Southerner, typical Southern Baptist person that's just going to church, like. Jesus means something to people in the Southern United States. And that's where Jackie Robinson comes into play with that and breaking that barrier, because baseball in of itself is America.
Yeah.
To me. And I can, and me being born in the 80s and growing up through that, I didn't grow up saying, "Oh, this person's different" or "this person's different" because they have a different skin tone than I do. I grew up appreciating things like something as simple as Family Matters, the shows that feature black families and stuff like that. That wasn't something that those things that I watched and I admired, and like my favorite baseball player, like Terry Pendleton on the Braves. Is a black guy.
Terry Pendleton's black.
Yeah,
you've talked about him more than
you
once,
did
and
not
I did
know?
not realize
Oh
that.
my goodness
No,
gracious.
I didn't know that at all.
He's my favorite.
So funny.
That is hilarious.
He's my favorite baseball player of all time, and I love
idea.
I love watching him, and I can remember as a kid, like pretending to be him when I was playing baseball. And you didn't, looking back as an adult, being from the South, all the stigma of being racism of the racism and stuff in the South, like you wouldn't have had that if it hadn't been for two Christian men that decided to
100%. And that's like,
so I look back and see that like that had an effect on my life. Not that like my parents did raise me to look down because they were Christians and God foresaw that like Christians should not and cannot be racist by definition because the blood of Jesus covered all men.
Amen.
But like God using believers in baseball, like enabled me, a kid from the Southern United States, who would be stigmatized as racist in any other parts of the world. Like my favorite baseball player was a black guy. So I pretended to be that guy.
Let me jump in. Because it's like there's an element to this where the world is trying to take credit for something that it didn't accomplish. Like our secular like Christians get blamed for all kinds of things, right? Now, I'm not saying that like that there wasn't an element within Southern Christian culture that justified the separation of races and specifically the intermingling of races from a theological and biblical perspective. Like absolutely that happened. I have a history. I know of that. The Christians have a checkered record on certain things when it comes to race relations, but the world has an even worse record, and it's like they want to take credit for integration. Why was there integration? It was because of Christians. Again, for all their faults, Martin Luther King and all, who were they?
Christians.
They were Christian reverends. Like they were meant like why was slavery abolished?
The abolitionist movement, which were almost entirely Christian.
Wilberforce was a Christian. Like it is the Christian ethic of what you said, that all men are created equal. We're all going to hell, or we're all going to be saved by the blood of Jesus. Like we're all in the same boat. Doesn't matter about your skin color. And that Jesus says that when you do come to Christ, they're neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. We are all we're new people. Like skin color doesn't matter. And again, it's like the revisionist history of like they tell the Jackie Robinson story, but leave out the singular motivator behind Jackie Robinson and the white dude named Branch Rickey, who's they did this because they were Christians. And that was their commonality that brought them together. And I think those things need to be like Jesus changes the world. And like carrying this over into a practical application. The big lesson, like just reading his book, is like, you know what? Character is contagious. And like if you want to impact the world, you don't impact the world by becoming like the world.
Character is contagious is actually just a great line, because regardless of what kind of character it is, it's contagious.
Yeah.
If you're hanging out with bad characters, your character will be impugned.
Bad company corrupts good morals.
Yeah. Character is contagious, regardless of whether it's good character or bad character.
Yeah. And as Christians, we should have godly character. And that is contagious. And that has the power to change things. The problem is that like there's this movement of the only way to change culture is to be relatable to culture or relevant with culture. When it's no, we stand as men and women of biblical character, regardless of what culture thinks or doesn't think. Like, we're mavericks. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, final thoughts. We're a little over here, but I know I kind of dominated the conversation tonight, but
Tonight?
okay. Thanks, man.
Low hanging fruit.
Appreciate that.
Yes, for me is you hear all about do what you need to do and change the world. Don't worry about changing the world. That's Jesus' job.
Right.
Follow Jesus. Jesus
Amen.
will change the job, and whether he chooses to use you or not, that's his concern. So follow Jesus, and he will change the world, whether through you or somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Be available for that, you know.
It's the heart of the outlaw, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. Yep.
You had anything more? That was it.
No, that's really it. It's so simple. We just overcomplicate it and convolute it.
Stand for truth. Stand for right, no matter what that means.
But
Because it doesn't matter what it means. It's just you stand for right.
But I think it's hard to know what right and wrong is if you don't follow Jesus.
Oh, that's
for
100%.
sure.
That's 100%.
And I think that's the main thing we miss. Like, lots of people say, oh, this is right, this is wrong. But then when you start talking to them, they're not followers of Jesus. They say, oh, my right is what I think is right, and my wrong is what I think is
It's a
wrong.
relative.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you follow Jesus, it's not relative. It is black and white of what is right and wrong. And if
I
you're-
like the black and white throwing.
Solid.
Right.
Solid.
But it just goes through everything from what Creighton is passionate about with abortion and things like that. It's like people are so caught up with one issue things instead of just focusing on the one issue that matters. And if you're focused on Jesus, you're following Jesus, then all the other issues are more defined, and you can figure out what's right and wrong from that instead of having to guess what the popular answer is.
Nailed it. Pope C.
I'm good.
Got nothing else?
Nope.
The let's wrap up a little different than normal. Couple prayer requests, praise report. First, please keep the Irwin family in your prayers. Gail leaves behind kids and grandkids and great grandkids that are gonna be dealing with a memorial service, a celebration of life, I'm sure, but that's still, no one was created for death, and so we weren't wired to handle what we weren't created for, which is why we really struggle in the presence of loss. We just don't know how to deal with it because we really don't. That's why you go through 5 stages of grief, because your body's trying to figure out what clicks, and there isn't anything. Just time heals wounds in that sense. So we want to lift up the Irwin family. Please keep them in your prayers. I have no idea about a service or whatnot. Again, GailIrwin.com. There was an article I know posted there that kind of gave a bit of a eulogy on the website, and it said that more information would come. So we'll see what all plays out there. Secondly, this on Sunday, and this is more of a Calvary 316 family thing. So if you were with us on Sunday, just a very quick recap. Aiden Norris, our little bro, is out of the hospital. He's home. He was in the ICU for several days dealing with this breathing thing. And they were yesterday able to move him to just a normal room, some breathing treatments, and he's home. His daddy told me he's doing great. And they really were thankful. We opened our service on Sunday, praying for Aiden, and so I was just kind of passing along a bit of a praise report for those that are watching that watch our service or connected to our community. That Aiden is doing great, which is wonderful. And then thirdly, we have a dear sister, a fan of our show, watches. Miss Colette is having surgery in the morning. I believe on some kind of a nasal issue that's been bothering her. And so she's a fan of the show. So I just would like the audience, all 12 of you or 13 of you, to keep Miss Colette in your prayers. Tomorrow morning, she's going into surgery. And so we want to lift that up in prayer as well. So with all that being said, let's roll some music. Thank you so much for joining us with the Outlaw Radio Show. If you're watching, check out the podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. The audio of what you've watched gets released on those platforms. If you're listening and you've never joined us live, it's kind of unique. We do, there's a lot of podcasts that release video from Rogan to Tucker to all the mainstream, but not a lot of them live streaming. And there's risks involved with live streaming, but we think it's a fun way of doing it, and it differentiates us a little bit. So if you're listening, hang out with us 8 o'clock Wednesday nights. All of our shows are archived on our YouTube channel, which is outlawradio.live. So be sure to check that out. God bless. Man, you have a wonderful Easter weekend. If you don't have a church, check out Calvary316.com. If not, we'll see you guys next Wednesday, 8 o'clock.